Lesson 19, Section 7, Society in the South. For the most part, the South was not greatly affected by the Jacksonian spirit of equality and opportunity, or the reform movements of the mid-1800s. Many Southerners in 1860 still measured wealth in terms of land and slaves. The result was a rigid social structure with a few rich plantation owners at the top, white farmers and workers in the middle, and African Americans, mostly enslaved, at the bottom. Slavery deeply affected the lives of all Southerners, black and white, because as long as the slave economy could be preserved, the South had little incentive to make progress economically or culturally. Even religion was affected. Southern church leaders defended the practice, taking a position that divided them from any churches in the North, whose leaders taught that slavery was unchristian. In the words of one historian, the South grew, but it did not develop. White Southerners. A small group of wealthy plantation owners dominated the economy and politics of the South. They enjoyed a leisurely way of life, filled with parties and social visits. While the children of wealthy families often went to colleges and universities, others received little education. Regardless of their education, girls were typically brought up to be wives and hostesses. Most white families owned some land, but only about 1 in 4 owned even one slave. The majority of white families worked their own fields and made most of what they needed themselves. Some whites were too poor to own any land, so they rented rugged mountain or forest land instead and paid the rent with the crops they raised. Since public schools were few and often inferior to those in the North, many white children were illiterate. African Americans in the South. A small minority of the African Americans in the South were free blacks. Free blacks were often forced to wear special badges, pay extra taxes, and live separately from whites. Most lived in towns and cities where they found jobs as skilled craftspeople, servants, or laborers. The great majority of African Americans in the South were slaves. While some worked as cooks, carpenters, blacksmiths, house servants, or nursemaids, most were field hands who labored from dawn until past dusk.